In this video, we're continuing the release tutorials for the A1 Skyraider. Last video, we did a walk around. We went through all the gauges. So if you missed that, you may want to go back and look at that so you know what the controls are. We're going to look at our throttle first. Make sure that's idle at 0.13, which should happen on start. We want to make sure our prop is 0. That's just going to make it so that our engine starts faster. We're going to turn on our master power. We're going to click our engine start stop. It should stay green. We're going to look at our RPM. At 210 knots, the starter is going to automatically stop, so we'll just listen for that. Alright, the starter went out at 210 RPM. If we dip below that, it will automatically restart. Next thing we want to do is go to our prop. We want 10% for takeoff and landing. So that's at 10%. We want to release our parking brake. We want to close our canopy. Flaps will remain 0. We'll start increasing our thrust. Now, it might take a bunch of thrust to get started. That's called breakaway thrust. That's something you really have with aircraft where it takes a bunch of thrust to get moving, but once you're moving, you can almost go to idle, which we're currently at idle. Now, if I hold my down arrow key on my keyboard, it applies the brakes. All right. If I use my left and right arrow keys, it does the tail wheel steering. All right, so those are our main taxi controls. So I'm just going to add a little bit of thrust here. Might need a bunch just to break away. All right, and I'm back to idle just to steer. All right, so I'm actually going to use all the runway. So this will actually showcase the maneuverability of these tail draggers. So one nice thing with the tail dragger is you can actually spin it in very small amount of space. So we'll use the brake as well, the down arrow. We'll come and we'll go all the way out to the X on this runway. I don't know why the Stormworks devs have X's on the runway. An X on a runway means the runway is shut down. It's closed. So, I don't know if they just looked at some pictures and that was nice, or this runway is, RP closed, or what the story is. So, as you can see how nice and maneuverable a tail dragger is, I'm going to hold the down arrow for the brakes. I just need to actually increase that a little to get some more braking. And we'll turn on the parking brakes while we're sitting here. All right, so the next, make sure my thrust is idle too. All right, next thing we do is going to lower the wings. Wings are lowered. All right, so tail dragger is one of the most difficult aircraft to take off and land. So we want to make sure we hold down our S key and get those elevators all the way up. All right, we want to increase our throttle to about 0.35%. As we're going down the runway with our elevators all the way up like this, as we approach about, if we look on here, when we get in the white bar about 40 knots, we're going to start to slowly press and hold the 1 key to increase our throttle. All right, that's going to let us take off. By holding the elevators up like that, that's going to keep that prop from striking the ground. All right, so that's important. If we hit that prop in the ground and we have vehicle damage on, it's going to break the blades off our prop and we're not going anywhere. All right, so we're going to release the brakes. We're going to go to 0.35. We're going to use our left and right arrow keys to steer. All right, I'm actually going to let go of the elevator. All right, now the tail should start coming up. All right, tail's up. Now we're going to pitch with our S key and we're going to go full throttle. Once we hit about 80 knots, we're up. All right. All right, so we're airborne. Next, we're going to look at our gear, admire the gear, and we're going to press the gear up and we'll watch them come in. They go up, they rotate, they go into their cubbies. That's how the real airplane does it. They actually rotate the opposite way on the real airplane, but it's not a big deal. So let's go to 50% prop. This is going to be our max speed. So full throttle and 50% prop gives us our max airspeed, about 215. It'll be a little bit higher, up to 230 if we didn't have all these bombs on. The bombs weigh a bunch, so that will slow us down. All right, so one thing you'll notice is with an aircraft like this, with a big prop, you're going to have to really keep it trimmed. So as you notice, I have some aileron trim in, I have some pitch trim. And every time in a plane, when you change pitch and power settings, you have to trim. So as you notice, the nose is trying to naturally come up. A couple taps with the trim. Now, I'm not putting a stability system in this because this is a World War II vintage airplane. You know, this is designed for hand flying. This is how a real airplane does. If you've ever flown a real airplane, you know how much you have to constantly trim. All right, so this is how it is in this. You just want to trim. All right, so this is 50%. That's our max speed. If we go to 100% prop, you'll hear the engine wind down. So at 50%, we were doing about 1100 RPM. At 100%, we're going to be doing about 600 and showing 628. So we're burning a lot less fuel. So we've only lost about 30 knots of speed, but we're burning a lot less fuel. All right, and now with this extra prop pitch, we're actually, you see the plane's trying to back to the right, so we're going to do a little bit more aileron trim. All right, and we're also pitching up, so we do a little bit of elevator trim. All right, so this is our cruise mode. All right, so this is going to save us the most fuel, and we're still going a really nice fast speed. We're doing about 180 knots at our best economy cruise. So there's no reason in this plane to be screaming around, listening to the engine screaming at 200 something knots. You're also going to start to temp up your engine if you're constantly at a high throttle. You know, in real life, you don't run around with your prop at a low pitch and, you know, maxed out. You know, very often in real life, you have to manage your temperature of your engines, especially in something, you know, World War II with a huge engine. All right, so if our temperature starts getting too high, we want to reduce our speed, keep our prop at 100%, reduce our speed to about 140 knots, and you'll notice that the temp actually starts to decrease. All right, so we can cruise around all day long at 100% prop, 140 knots, and you'll notice we will not overtemp our engine. All right, you notice how slow that temp's moving. I just dropped a tiny bit, I dropped 2 knots, and now we're losing temperature. All right, so this is set to be like a realistic airplane. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head back for this airport so that we're not just flying far away. So I'm going to set my waypoint, and we'll start to head back. All right, we'll start heading back to the airport. Now, as you can see, this is a quote-unquote slow World War II airplane. And you see how even doing max endurance, we aren't even doing max speed. We're way over here already. All right, so this plane is a nice fast warbird. All right, so we're 12 kilometers away. So, you know, in miles, that's about 6 nautical miles. We're doing 140 knots, so that should take us 3 minutes to get there. All right, so somebody used to do this professionally. All right, so for landing, we need to talk about how to set up for landing. So one of the most important things for landing a tail dragger is when we flare, we need to make sure that we want to get our attitude in the correct position. So if we, you know, I'll show you when we get on the ground again, but when we're in the ground, our artificial horizon, the bar here was on that first notch there. That's what we want to look like when we're flaring. We want to be on that notch. And if we hold it there, all 3 wheels will gently touch down on the ground, the 2 mains and the tail wheel. All right, so now let's get set up for landing. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our prop. Let's go back down to 10% for landing. So we're at about 10's fine, so 12 is perfectly fine. Right, like I said, every time we make a big pitch or power setting, we need to trim. So we need some more elevator trim here. All right, so next thing we want to do is we want to put our gear down. Gear's coming down. Now, the only indication that our gear is down is this switch being in the down position. We're going to put our flaps all the way down, and we're going to start reducing our thrust as well to so that we are slowing down. We want to approach at 100 knots. We don't want to get too fast. We don't want to get too slow, just like a real airplane. Too slow, we're going to stall. Too fast, we're going to overshoot. We're going to have to do a go-around. This is not a very long runway, all right? Now, you probably heard that ding. That's our landing gear locking in place. All right, so our landing gear locked down. That's going to keep us so that we don't collapse the gear if we hit too hard. So we can actually hit reasonably hard in this aircraft. We won't collapse the gear. All right, so we can look. There's our runway where it's a little bit to our right. All right, so the main thing we want to do, you know, landing any plane, but especially landing a tail dragger like this, is we want to watch our speed. All right. 100 knots. We want as close to 100 knots as we can get. We don't want to go fast. We don't want to go slow. I'm going to just remove that marker so we're not looking at it. All right, so we are way high. All right, we're way high and we're a little fast. That's fine. We're diving down, so we're actually not going to change our power setting. We have full flaps, gear down. prop is at 10% pitch, and we're just using the 1 and 2 keys to maintain our speed. All right, I'm actually going to just dump this nose down. I'm going to dive down. We'll gain a little speed, but we'll lose it once I level out. All right, so I'm way high, so let's get down and stabilized. All right, so we used to actually have to go around in the airlines if we weren't stabilized by 1,000 feet. So I'm adding thrust here, okay? Just very gently moving my 1 and 2 keys. I'm getting fast. All right, small power corrections. All right, adding a little in. We're starting to slow down, so I'm adding in, keeping the nose down. Now I'm going to start to flare. Level out, pick the nose up, pick the nose up. All right, and we're down. I'm going to bring the thrust to 0. I'm going to hold the down arrow. That's my brakes. All right, I'm going to use the tail wheel steering. I'm holding the brakes, and I'm just gently steering with the tail wheel. All right, not the most beautiful landing, but again, you know, I'm sitting here talking to you guys, so a little bit more distraction than if I was just flying by myself. All right, so nice, easy. Well, not necessarily easy. This is a challenge. All right, tail draggers are a challenge. I've never flown one in real life. I have 2,700 hours, mostly in jet aircraft, and I would struggle with a tail dragger my first time, most certainly. It's just a completely different type of flying. All right, so let's talk about what I was mentioning with that 1 bar. All right, I should have shown you guys on the ground, but we'll do it now that we're on the ground. All right, so if we look at where our artificial horizon is, right, we are planted on the ground. We have both mains on the ground and we have the tail on the ground. So when we flare, what a flare means is you're picking your nose up. All right, that's going to slowly put you into the ground, land on the ground. If you notice, we're at 1 bar. So once we get ready to flare, if we hold our bar at that 1 bar, we'll make a nice flare and we'll land on all 3 landing gear and we'll have a nice smooth landing. All right, so you want to keep that picture there. All right, so let's do a quick shutdown just to show how to shut down the aircraft. So shutdown, we'll leave the prop here. If it's at 10%, that's going to help the prop stop moving. We want to just click engine start stop. It's that simple. All right, as you see, our RPM's dropping. So what we've done there is we've essentially made our fuel manifold go to 0. So the engine is getting no fuel right now. So that stops it. Now you'll notice it's taking a while to spin down. That's fine. 10% prop pitch is just going to take it a little while to slow that engine down. All right, next thing we can do is we can turn off our master power. That's going to stop us from draining a bunch of battery. All right, our gauge actually will not read what our battery is once the master power is off. Now our canopy is hardwired because it's on a flip switch, so if we forget, we can still get out with that. We could store a parachute if we want, and we'll jump on out. All right, so that is our A1 Skyraider. It's designed to be as realistic as possible, and a tail dragger is challenging to take off and land. But as you can see, not really too bad. All right, in the next video, we'll go and we'll start shooting at some stuff. All right, thank you for watching.